Putting up another set of TVs.
That way we could have the Super Bowl basketball.
HGTV.
And pickleball.
All right, good evening, everybody. It is 5:30, and thank you. So we'll call the meeting of the Budget Committee to order. Ms. Donaldson, would you call the roll, please?
Fitzwater,
Present.
Hensley,
Present.
Kimna,
Here.
Lester,
Here.
Schreiber, Spencer,
Here.
Spicer,
Present.
Vogt,
Here.
Ward, Wiseman.
Okay, our next order of business is wishing City Councilor Ryan Molman a happy birthday. Mayor Turgeon has treated us all with warm, delicious cookies, which are making the rounds right now. So happy birthday, Ryan, and we're glad you're spending it with us. That's too bad. This isn't being recorded. All right, our next item is to continue the committee discussion of the budget. So we have a number of items that are left on the parking lot from our last meeting. So that we have time tonight to continue discussing those items, to vote to adopt or reject proposed changes, and then to discuss other potential changes. So I'm going to kick things off. Which side's easier? This one. Under expense changes, numbers 1, 2, and 3, and 4 are what I'm proposing tonight. 1 and 2, the 7 police vehicles. And I think there's going to be another item as well. Essentially, what I'm proposing is 7 police vehicles out of this capital improvement sales tax G stormwater line, 2 more police vehicles out of the sales tax G contingency line, and then $540,917.60 out of ARPA for eligible stormwater improvements. And that odd figure there is to get us to an even $1 million towards stormwater improvements in the next fiscal year, which would be an increase of $230,000 over what's currently in the budget, and it's a nice round number. So we have 7 police cars coming out of the G sales tax stormwater line, the amount coming out of the G sales tax stormwater line is more than made up for by the proposed ARPA spending on an item that I know I'm comfortable with my sense of what a priority stormwater is for our neighbors across the city. Then 2 more police vehicles for almost $89,000 coming out of the sales tax G contingency line. I think the current balance of that line is about 294,000 and change. And my understanding of that line is that it's simply unallocated, unappropriated, unclaimed money that is coming in sales tax G, and I have proposed an eligible use for these funds. So again, this would finish off the police vehicle request for the year, and again gets us up to that $1 million for stormwater for the. So with that, I'll open it up to any comments or questions anybody else on the committee has, if there are any. Councilman Kemna.
Well, and I just know, I know it's preliminary, but I know I just talked with one of our commissioners and they've received some ARPA funds and they've expressed interest. I think there's some talk, and we'll have to work that out, but talk to do some efforts with the city to get some stormwaters within. I know they're thinking about the same ideas.
Any other comments or questions? Well, I will move for the adoption of these proposed changes as a slate. And the reason I'm doing that is primarily because some of these pieces sort of rely on or lean on each other. And I wouldn't want some of it to get passed and others of it to fail, because that would mess up some of the math. So I move that all of these proposed changes with my name next to them be adopted by the committee. And we're going to try, is there any other comment, conversation, discussion, question? Councilman Fitzwater.
I just wanted to follow up my comments from the last meeting. So we're going to continue to grab dollars from ARPA prior to having an overall priority discussion.
That's what I've proposed here in the limited topic of stormwater improvements.
Oh, I won't repeat my comments. Thank you.
For all of these meetings, when possible, we will just do them by group voice vote, unless it seems too close to us, and in which case a roll call vote will be taken. So all in favor of approving this slate of proposed changes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, and the changes are adopted. Okay, any other topics, proposals members of the committee would like to discuss or bring forward? Councilman Lesser.
So, yes, I've proposed some changes. They all have to do with more effective and efficient city business operations. For that, I felt we need good current information systems, and for that, the software infrastructure for that. And from the pink sheets, both from finance and human services, I've identified the e-procurement contract management system, finance, and then electronic employee file system from human service, from services, and electronic learning management system and electronic performance appraisal system. Those total 52,000, and I propose that those be paid for by money out of sales tax G contingency fund, and all that will be in the software fund ITS software fund in the G sales tax. So it's shifting money within G sales tax.
And that IT line is one that exists within the sales tax G already?
Yes, that's, it's,
There it is.
yeah, 50, the in the numbers are 574070.
And there's currently not anything allocated to that line for this current budget.
There is actually
some.
that's a coding error on my part. The $65,000 that appear in the annexation line right below it should be on that ITGIS line.
Okay, so I guess I just have a question. So the 65 that's in there right now, is that already planned for other improvements besides?
Yes, yes, it is. And the majority of it for this year is the GIS flyover.
So this proposal would be increasing the 65,000 to about 137,000 or 100.
So,
I shouldn't do math. Like that.
so
Yeah, math
Margie,
is hard.
Almost got it.
Margie, I thought it would probably be in the ITS software line, which is another line. Is that? I mean, there's two ITS lines. So that's,
The one that's the 574070 account, Councilman Lester, is Parks IT
okay.
line.
okay.
So the line for the,
So
the
051.
cities, yeah,
Okay,
is the 578051.
one, okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions on Councilman Lester's proposal? Councilman Spencer.
I have a question. The performance appraisal software, can you give us a little background on that?
So that would be software that the supervisors could actually do the appraisals electronically. It could all funnel through with electronic signatures. It would store the information. We'd be able to print reports as to who's received their performance evaluations, who hasn't, what their levels are, whether, how many people met expectations, who didn't, those types of things. So it would just make it kind of would streamline the process. Right
So
now,
basically
we're just
eliminating the paper
using-
process.
Yeah, yeah. And it would also give us the opportunity to look at exactly how we're evaluating employees and look at change some of the metrics, those types of things.
Okay. And I guess what I'm questioning is fire department already has a performance appraisal that they've been using for a number of years. Why wouldn't the rest of the city want to copy off of that?
So that system actually, they do it, they type them into that, but then they actually print them out, do paper signatures, transfer them, send them through to human resources, that kind of thing. So it's still, it's great, but it's still technically a paper process.
Councilman Kemna.
And I think for a lot of these, we're talking about going paperless. For some, I know with my employer, there's elements where we don't want to eliminate all of the paper process. They keep so much documents on file for so long. I would assume that would still be at play, even though if we do approve these, we're just not eliminating all of the files. We're still going to probably look at some of them to keep hard copies. Is that accurate?
Maybe, but honestly, no, we're really looking to try to be as paperless as possible.
Okay.
So that information could be pulled up from anywhere at any time.
Councilwoman Ward.
And I believe there's software, at least in my experience from my employer, and we've done the electronic for years now, where it can track goals, like the employee can put what they see their goals are, and then the employer can respond back with what they see their goals as, and it tracks it. And it's, even though you're not meeting in person, it's almost like it's more interactive because an employee gets to put down what they've been doing, a summary the last year, and rate themselves. And then your employer then responds with their comments and rates. And it's just, I think from having experience both in person and electronic, that, I mean, I prefer the electronic. I get more out of it, actually.
I have just a question of curiosity. Is there a central file room here?
There is.
Okay, so would the need for that eventually either be eliminated or greatly reduced? Would this free up square footage in the?
It would. Well, I mean, this one in and of itself would not free up a lot because we would still have to have personnel files, but all of these together would definitely free up. But it's just a closet, a large walk-in closet is the room. So it wouldn't probably, really free up a ton of space. It wouldn't necessarily free up space or anything like that, but I would be happy to show any space at any time.
Thank you. Councilman Kemna?
And I know we don't know yet, but some of these we've talked about earlier could be reimbursed if we were allocated the COVID. So that would just go back into that line item if it was reimbursed. Right. So I just want to understand
Yeah,
that.
possibly, yeah.
Possibly.
Any other comments or questions? Councilman Fitzwater?
On this Tech G contingency fund, assuming these two transactions, where does that leave that fund? What's left in there?
After the 52,000 for what I'm proposing, it left in there 242,750. I'm not sure how much of your,
I think we'd be somewhere in the 150, 160 range, but.
Question from Matt. Mr. Marash, from our meeting we had earlier today in Public Works, you had mentioned about the working with SEMA on some possible new floodplain data and maps. Is there a potential cost to that we would have to?
Maybe, I haven't got that far yet. Likely some cost. I just don't recall. Last time we did it was many years ago, and they initiated it, statewide. And so there was still some cost for correcting mail. It wasn't astronomical, 50,000 as I recall.
50, I'm sorry,
50,000
50.
is under.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this point? Councilman Lester, I'll yield back to you.
so basically that's what I'm proposing for adjustments in sales tax G budget, part of 22 budget.
That's your motion?
Yes, I move that we adopt those changes.
Okay, there's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Is there any other conversation on this point? All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. These changes are adopted. Okay. There are plenty of other items remaining on the parking lot. Councilwoman Ward.
Okay, regarding my motion the other night, to use the 12 grand for the replacement of streetlights for Polycom and recycling bin, which is 8 grand, leaving 4,000 additional surplus. I would like to put on the parking lot, the raise in the pager pay, which can be found on the pink sheet. It's on the list on page 270. And the amount is $4,160.
And would that be covered?
The remainder of the streetlights, 12 grand. I had put up the 3 and the 5,000, which is 8, and I had 4,000 left over. So I'm in the whole $160, but close.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can leave the 160, oh, Council, sorry, Ms. Mueller.
So that issue, Laura, crosses more than just the street department. There's similar pink sheets because of the same issue. If you change the policy, there's increased standby pay for the wastewater treatment system and the collection system. All of them are around that 4160. So just wanted to point that out, that if you change the policy, it has a larger dollar impact. If you just fund this, it would just be for streets.
So we would need about 12.5
Yeah.
if we were going to make the policy change. Mr. Marash?
But, you know, that, the other two would come out of, not the general fund, wastewater. Does have a surplus to it.
Sorry. Both of the others would come out of,
Yeah,
Funds
those
that
are,
have-
those are
yes.
wastewater fund accounts.
okay. So they could absorb, you're saying they could absorb, okay.
So when you say policy, I mean, if we were to make a motion and vote on those 3 pagers from those departments being taken out from wastewater money, then that would take care of it.
Mhm.
Okay. Well,
Expanding it?
I'll expand it, do that. And I guess I still have a surplus of 4,000 off of my 12 grand.
No,
Oh,
there's 4160
streets,
for
okay.
streets, which would be general fund, and then wastewater has the 2
oh,
different
there's 2,
departments, so
okay.
4160 for each one of those departments.
Okay.
Maybe the streets could take it on themselves to find $160 in there.
We'll give it a good try.
That's it. Yeah. So Councilwoman Ward, you have, try to remember. You had the Polycom. Out of the 12. And then you're adding the these other 2 enterprise fund increases as well. Okay, is it all for now?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any comments or questions on these proposals? Anyone at all? Councilwoman Ward?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion that we just explained.
Okay.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion regarding slate of proposed changes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, and those changes are adopted. Councilman Kemna.
I know that last meeting in the discussion, talking about the electronic filing, I think contract up. that was going to cover it. Well, with Mike's motion, that does cover this. So I don't know if I have the authority, but I would make the motion to just take the rape contract.
I think maybe what we should do on that is, since she's not here to bring it back up tonight, it's going to expire at the end of this meeting anyway. And then she can get up to speed on what happened tonight. And if she has a desire to continue pursuing that, she can bring it up again at our next meeting or deal with it however she'd like. So it's going to be off at the end of the meeting anyway. But I like where your head's at. Okay. Okay, any further discussion from members of the committee on any other points? Councilman Spencer.
Yes, I would like to, and this is kind of probably a little different request than what has been talked about in the past, but just a little here. I'd like to place on the parking lot a revenue change for having a consistent and clarity for admin fees to include the almost $200,000 from Parks and Rec to cover those admin fees. And I'd like to give Mr. Spalding and his staff time to see where those changes could be, not come from us this time.
Okay, yeah, I mean, you're right. We usually don't see, I guess this would be proposing to, oh, it would be a source and a use, right? It would be shifting it from 200K or so from parks to the admin chargeback. So is that your proposal for now?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any further comments on it at this point?
No, I just think it's an opportunity for all admin fees to utilize the same formula, again, for clarity and from departments, whether it be enterprise funds to Parks Fund. So.
Mr. Spalding, Councilman Spencer mentioned you during his comments. And since this relates to your department, do you have any comment on this topic?
I think I'm going to let our Commission President, Chris Leichel, talk about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for the opportunity to address that. As a commission, we certainly respect all departments and the revenues that they have in those departments and how they expend those funds, and that all departments are good stewards of those funds and taxpayers' funds. And we at Parks strongly feel that the revenues that we get in our budget are for the betterment of our community and our citizens. And any changes to those funds and how we receive them has causes and effects, real causes and effects. And certainly, again, wouldn't question how any other department uses their funds, but we certainly try to do that and make real impact and what we call real and impactful projects to our city. So, if you look back historically over the last several years, the funds that we've been charged back has been around, well, at least last year, around 283,000, and then smaller amounts in years past. And it's grown, obviously, each year. And this year, we were projected to pay, I think, 302,000. And then with this, well, at least what we submitted to the as part of the mayor's budget was 302. And this change would be a 60% increase, which is pretty significant. And, the taxpayers some time ago voted overwhelmingly in support of dedicated park sales tax. So again, we feel pretty comfortable and confident that we utilize the taxpayers' money in the ways that they do, and evidenced by 3 of the major projects that we've done here with Community Park, McClung Park, and Riverside and Amphitheater, and certainly have many other projects that we'd like to do, and shrinking our budget wouldn't help us in that effort. So
Any other comments from Parks?
I'd just like to add that in my 5 years here, this comes up most every year and discuss it. And I think what I've asked, I think would be a wise use of our time is that if we should be paying more, I think we should, we owe it to our citizens, we owe it to staff to dive into that and figure out what that means. Because as we talk about, equal pay for all departments, what is being requested is not. And so I think we pay a fair amount. I think, but if we really wanted to dive into it, I'd love that opportunity to do that. And I think in taking the next little time or picking out a quarter of our year and looking at what we really cost the city's general fund to operate a park department, I think would be a really wise use of our time. I just don't think now would be the right time, but I would certainly welcome that time to do that. As a side note, when I first got here and had the conversation with former Director Lockwood, park departments across the state were political leaders in our state found it important to create this dedicated park sales tax. And so when that happened, there became this idea of administrative chargebacks. And as I spoke with Director Lockwood, one of the things that they sat down and figured out, what would it cost to operate a park department if we took away all the general fund money, they took away the property tax money, which is what happened when we got the dedicated park sales tax. What would it really cost the city? And that's where they came up with the number around $250,000, what it was in the very beginning. The city administrator at the time, the political leaders at the time, and the staff at the time. That's where they came up with that number. So instead of just leaving that number like it was at 250,000 and having to answer these questions again, that number ended up being about 5% of the total sales tax revenues that we thought we were going to be in. And so that's why they tied that number to sales tax revenue. And I think it was based on what they figured at the time would be what the park department would cost the city. So it would certainly impact what we do. There's no question about it. And I would like the time to potentially sit down with city staff and really dive into that and figure out what it really costs for our park department to do this. Because it will affect quality of life issues and it will affect economic impact for you. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman Spencer.
Little background questioning here. So when you came to the council to ask for bonding, what was your original figure requested?
The original number was, I think, 15 million, I believe. Margie, does that sound right? I think it's 15, yeah.
How much?
15 million?
15 million.
That's correct.
What was decided by the council at that time?
7.5.
7. So $200,000 a year difference, you're that tight of running a budget?
What I'm saying is it would impact the services that we and facilities that we offer our community and parks related things. Correct.
So you're running that tight of budget?
Well, I don't know how you would.
Well, I'm asking because,
Yeah.
I mean,
We run a
you've
tight
purchased
budget.
in the past $5,000 park benches.
And I support that. That was a good purchase that the commission and staff thought was the best, and they're used.
I
They're
think
used
if
well.
you ask the average citizen, they find that a complete waste of money.
I've talked to a lot of folks that disagree with that.
I'm sure you have, and
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of them too. I
Yes.
knocked on their doors.
Okey-doke.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes.
Certainly budgets are all budgets could be delved into. And, serving the military for 24 years and being in charge of a $10 million budget myself, you can always find things to tweak and adjust or whatever. And our Parks Department's no different. we'd certainly like to take a look at anything in ways of saving the citizens' money. But overall, when you look at our budget and what we do and what we're trying to accomplish to the citizens and give the citizens and help build infrastructure to support our citizens and retain people in Jefferson City, we only see that as growth and opportunity and impactful. Certainly, you can debate one thing or the other. I think most departments, most budgets you could. But we want to do it honestly, friendly, respectful, appreciatively. And if there's something that we can address, we certainly would take a look at that. But we want to do it above board and respectfully. Thank you.
And I appreciate those comments of being above board and doing it professionally and respectfully. And that's kind of the reasoning why I'm really trying to push this forward. Again, it's fair and equitable for having a same formula that's utilized for all departments. That way we can eliminate this in the future.
Certainly, and not to get in a tit for tat, but the tone is kind of the reason that I'm responding to is the tone in which they're presented.
Councilman
Thank you.
Fitzwater.
Yeah, I just wanted to make an observation, and I appreciate your comment about sunshine. Man, I've made that comment. I don't mind laying anything on the table. I think everything ought to be open for discussion, especially in a public organization. The two observations I would make is, one, I think Councilman Spencer, and I think you guys acknowledge that there is some set formula that is utilized. And to me, consistency seems like a positive step. I don't know how this one got out of line. I appreciate your background because I'm still learning the history of how some of these decisions are made. But erring toward consistency in how other departments are treated seems like a positive on the surface. The other is more important to me, or equally as important. I don't know if, I assume most people in this room remember when our assessor at the county, which doesn't have any impact on the city, challenged the county commissioners because of the allocation for his computers and how he ran the assessor's office. And it was a running battle for a long time that he ended up losing. Neither here nor there what the amount was. But the negative was the friction that continues in there in some degree between that office and most of the commissioners have changed since that time, but the wounds and the partnership that we have, I think, with Parks and trying to, I think people have caught the vision of things that Parks they're doing, and I think I've had the conversation with both of you. There's not a lot that we do in the city that people get really excited about, but I think people that do use the parks get excited. So, I think the councilman raised a good point. I think for goodwill, if we've got a model that's working, we've got something that we can point to. We've got a lot of projects that we're going to work on over the next 5 to 10 years. I'm not saying this would influence, which way this goes would influence how I would vote on those. I would look at each of them individually, but I think that partnership that we've been able to develop means something to the city. And, I understand we're all trying to carve a budget without growing the city, and I don't know if we're doing that, but 200,000 is real dollars. But I think there's some background to make that happen, Mr. Chairman, and I think I would support it because of those two reasons. The friction that it potentially could cause, and maybe it won't. A different situation at the county personality-wise, but a similar type issue, and the fact that there is a model there that has worked, and for some reason it got off, and I don't have any problem exploring why it got off or where it's at. I don't know if it's worth the time to do it, but again, I'm willing to lay anything on the table if that's and accept the results. But as it stands, just on those two observations, I would support the contention. And, again, I'm looking at this for whatever my tenure is on this council as a long-term partnership. And I just think there are reasons that everybody wins if we make that change. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilman Kemna, do you have a comment?
Sure. And I don't know if we have these figures, but Todd, do you know, like in comparison to other municipalities, like their administrative chargeback fees, how is our chargeback fee compared to some of the other cities of our size or bigger?
I couldn't speak very intelligently on that tonight. I've spoken with quite a few. Our state organization actually has sent something out to other member organizations. I can speak to a couple that I know, personally, but I don't want to look at that as cherry picking.
Okay.
I will tell you one that I'm completely, I've worked for two cities in my career. The last one being Belton, Missouri, a community of about 30,000. They have a dedicated park sales tax. They also have a property tax that goes towards parks, as well as fees received. The year I left, we were paying $28,000 to the city's general fund for administrative services, and the city covered the park department's water bill in its entirety. I also worked with a community a lot in Lee Summit, Missouri, another suburban community in Kansas City, quite a bit larger than ours. They also have a dedicated park sales tax as well as property tax. And they pay a little over $100,000 a year to their city's general fund. And the city pays for the entirety of their tree service and rent on the community centers and things like that as well. Columbia works differently. They have, feels like about a dozen charges back and forth. So I haven't got a real good feel on what they're charging. But certainly I started that process, but that'll take a little bit to figure out.
I appreciate that. And so it's my understanding that a lot of different cities kind of handle these differently. It's not really one method, right, to handle the administrative chargeback policy.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And I have yet to find a department that uses the percentage of total expenses like we're proposing.
So we might be one of the few that uses that.
I haven't found any
Okay.
yet.
I think there's some questions to this, and I know you said that you'd be willing to look into this. I think for the timing, since there is some gray areas with this, I'm not going to support a measure to take money from the parks when we can look into this a little further and find a better solution. Please.
In your findings, is it true just for parks, or do other cities do that for every division? They have a different model that they use as how they do their chargebacks.
I don't know that answer.
It seems like that would be something to be valuable to know too. I mean, again, the consistency to me seems like we've got something we can defend. Now, if they're consistent except for parks, then that's one thing. But if they're treating every department or division as a separate entity and negotiating that number, that's a different answer.
I assume these are just figures and something that we just come up with on our own, this process. And I know that's not the case, but just a little background on that would be.
I mean, it's
helpful.
it's strictly an allocation across all departments, the same formula. I will mention that it has been audited by the federal government through the transit system and approved in every triennial review as a reasonable method of allocation for indirect costs for the federal government. So
this isn't some staff number that we came up with. I mean, city council, right or wrong, good or bad, there's a consistent number there that can be used to allocate that, and that's been approved by the council in the past. Certainly can go through and talk about changes. It wouldn't be for a 3-month period. It'd be for a 3-year period. That certainly is a significant endeavor, but I think that that's certainly worthwhile. But don't want to give the impression that it's just an arbitrary number that came up. I mean, to your point, there is a consistent methodology there applied consistently among departments.
Mr. Spalding, you mentioned when discussing Columbia that their chargeback calculus has charges going back and forth. That doesn't seem to be exactly how the chargeback is here, but the administrative chargeback we're talking about is for services rendered by central office staff here, administration staff for the other departments. Are there also services that Parks provide to the city government generally, or other specific city departments?
That we provide for
Do
us
you
city.
provide either at a charge or at no charge?
Yeah, there are the things that are charged, like we, under the ordinance, the Parks Department holds the forestry director that's in charge and care of all trees in the streets and right of way in the city. We received $25,000 for that. The cost to our department that we track is considerably more than that. We take care of this city hall annex and the grounds around this. I believe that number is 11,000 something. It's been that way since, I think, 1999. We spend, more time than that. We take care of various locations, the Edgewood Islands, just all together here, but we recently got the Environmental Quality Commission and Cultural Arts Commission that we spend time on that was a city general fund funded thing, that no dollars are transferred to our fund for that now. The Hope Fountain, we take care of various, like I said, city and right-of-way trees. Yeah, so those are some of the items we do.
Well, I mean, speaking as one person, as we chew on this over the next week, because our next budget committee meeting is a week from tonight. If you're already tracking these things, it might be helpful for the members of the committee just to judge general fairness, of the back and forth system, to have a sense, to know what we're paying for what services, and then what Parks considers the actual value of those services to be, and then some calculation as to how you got to that number. I mean, I'd appreciate seeing that on paper, but that'd be helpful. Councilman Lester?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I went over the budget thoroughly this time, and that tree and landscape one, and the other one really stands out because it's just a plug figure across all those years. For trees, I know in 2019, which was a tornado year, the trees, all the trees in the park where I live got clobbered. And I know in that year, it was, I don't know, just many multiples of times more than 25,000. And I'm all for consistency, but I have to just ask, well, when we do the safety sales tax, then it's going to be applied the same thing to fire and police budget? Just something we need to consider.
Sorry, is what? Is
Is a chargeback going to be applied in that sales tax? That to those departments in that same way?
It's a general fund department.
yeah, it's supplementing general fund. Yeah, so things like the number of staff you have doing that kind of stuff, what the salaries of those folks are, total, how much time, just trying to get a sense of things. Comments or questions additionally from anyone? Mr. Molman, you look like you're about to say something. It's the mask. I'm out of practice in a public setting. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee on this point? Okay.
I do have one comment.
Oh, Councilman
So-
Spencer.
you know, when the tornado came through, there was volunteer organization to help supplement the parks to remove trees. Our part of our organization with the Baptist Disaster Relief helped do Hickory Park. Our church worked on that, so I appreciate clarity in that as well.
Well, that was, I believe, Councilman Lesser spoke to that. We received a lot of help during the tornado. That number has nothing to do with the tornado cleanup.
No, but you would have incurred an expense to remove that debris if we didn't have volunteer organizations to help with that.
We don't count those numbers for the tornado on the chargeback number, forestry.
I'm saying as an expense that your department would have incurred if a volunteer organization wouldn't have helped remove the debris from the parks. That's an added expense that your organization would have had to incur, not with the chargebacks. It's just a philosophical discussion.
And the money that we receive from the city's general fund does not go towards any care or removal for park-related trees or anything like that.
I'm sure we're all very, very grateful still for the tens or hundreds of thousands of hours contributed by thousands and thousands of volunteers to do all kind of stuff across the city for months and months after. Any other comments or questions from anybody? All right, it is on the parking lot, and we'll come back to it next week. Any other topics of discussion this evening? Are there other items on other parts of the parking lot that we might not be seeing right now? Yeah. It's one that is still in progress and searching for, and more discussion we had. So even though it might, for administrative reasons, be wiped off tonight, I'm sure it'll come back and until we figure out what we might be able to do about it. Okay. Any other topics of discussion this evening? Councilman Fitzwater.
Well, I just wondered if you could just share what are we still discussing on the cameras?
I don't have a proposal to make this evening for funding the cameras. I don't know if anyone else found anything or if this particular budget is going to be the path for that or what. I don't have the answer for that this evening. Councilman Spencer.
That would, with the administrative chargebacks, that was going to go towards pool to help fund those body cams.
Any other comments or questions tonight? There will be no second chances this evening for comments or questions. All right, well, we really accomplished a lot tonight in terms of working proposals through and adopting some nice changes, and also had a really thorough conversation on an important topic. So if there are no other proposals or topics of conversation tonight, we will adjourn. And our next meeting is next Thursday night at 5:30 p.m. in the same room. And I hope everyone has a great weekend. Thank you.